Dianne Tillman is an educational psychologist. She spent many years working in the Los Angeles city schools. I met Dianne in 1999 when we were piloting a global character education curriculum that she developed called Living Values Educational Program. So Dianne, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Schools have just started here in Miami, and I don't know, there's back in session in California, and other places are coming online now. So this year and a half has been tough enough, but now we've layered on top of everything the anxiety and worry that kids and parents are feeling about going back to school. So tell us a little bit what you're doing, or what people have been asking you, or what you're advising.
I think there's been a lot of worries and a lot of fears over the last 18 months. And I think children have gotten socially isolated. So my advice is to observe your child and see how they're doing with social interactions. Some of them have withdrawn into themselves. In some classrooms, they're finding that kids are not responding to the teachers. You know, they're sort of just sitting there. And instead of coming into the classroom and them being noisy and roughhousing, they're just walking in and sitting down, which is not a good sign for young people. And so I would suggest that parents spend some time in nature with their children. Make sure they're doing us time and playtime or listening time with their children, whatever age they are. Whether it's 10 to 15, 20 minutes of play, or whether it's listening, but have the family go out into nature and walk. This is very grounding. It makes us feel part of the world again. And it makes us a lot less afraid. I have a friend, and she said something very beautiful to me once. She said, when you walk in nature and you're afraid, the trees are curious about your fear, and they take it and they lift it to the heavens. Isn't that lovely? So if your child is reticent to be with other children, or just is sort of uncomfortable because they've spent so much time alone, have play dates again, you know, with one child, and allow them to have time to get used to interacting with children again. And the other thing that I suggest is make sure you're having family time every day. Family time is so important. Time without the cell phones, time without the video games, time to be with the family. Maybe the kids help make dinner or be responsible for making some dinner. And, you know, they get time with you to play, to have a movie night, to choose a movie that is humanizing and full of hope. And you may want to have gratitude circles, you know, in the evening before they go to bed, and have them each share something that went well in the day, and have you know, when the youngest one goes to bed, to gather around their bed and have a gratitude circle, and maybe even do a little bit of prayer or meditation together. In Living Values, we have what we call quietly being activities for little kids, and relaxation focusing exercises for big kids. But they're important. And it's important for children to completely relax and to feel safe. So those are a few things. And probably the most important thing, make yourself okay as parents. For you to spend some time in the morning praying or meditating, getting yourself together, walking in the grass or the sand in bare feet, grounding yourself, letting yourself know that everything is going to be okay. Sorry, Kathy, when you ask me a question, I tend to answer forever. But
Well, you've answered my next question, which is what about parents?
But, you know, it's such a time right now in the world with the numbers of wars and conflicts and the pandemic and the growing inequalities and, you know, 80 million refugees and so many street children, trafficking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and the increasing polarization in our country. So Kathy forewarned me that you would ask about the origins of living values education. And one of the origins was a tenet in the UN Charter that spoke about respect, the importance of human beings in their dignity, in their worth, the importance of respect, the importance of peace, the importance of tolerance. It's a really incredible charter. And so, are we giving ourselves a message and our children a message? In Living Values, we really say that everyone deserves to be treated with respect, myself and everyone else too. So to model that peace and respect for your children, and also to model hope, to let them know that it is going to be okay. If they're worried about things, to help them see what's happening. You know, sometimes they might say, but Mom, this person is mean, or why is that person doing that? And to just explain it. And if you're practicing your peace and practicing your love, you can interpret it for them and you can say, you know, in our family, we like peace and we like love. And some people are sometimes mean because they didn't get the love they needed and they didn't get the peace they needed, and it all dried up. So we have to be kind to them too. Be safe, but be kind.
Dianne, 3 or 4 things I wanted to follow up with. This idea of feeling safe. I think that's such a big one, that our sense of security and kids' sense of security, everyone's sense of security has been shaken. Mm-hmm. So how do we use living values to develop some self-soothing skills in ourselves and share those and model those with children and those around us? I was sharing with you when we spoke before, there's this outbreak of adult tantrums going on. Mm-hmm. And what's being over a variety of things, you know, the impatience and intolerance, and it's culminating in what I call adult tantrums. People are just raging. Mm-hmm. So how can we tamp that down and transform that using some living values activities or the philosophy about it?
It's really a shame, isn't it? It's just amazing. If you're listening to this call, I trust that you are not a tantruming adult. And it's so important not to tantrum as adults. One, because we're modeling for our children a way to be. For example, you don't model peace for your children by yelling at them to be peaceful. Hey, I told you. But tantruming adults are scary for children. So it really increases for sensitive children their fear about the world and their feelings that things aren't in control. Because when there's a tantruming adult, there's often a response to it. And the response is often not good. So if the child sees the parent not okay and get hurt by that, then that increases their sense of the world being unsafe. Also, you don't want to get into the habit, you don't want to get into the habit of raging, because it will increase the likelihood of raging at your own child. You don't want to activate that personality trait. You want to activate with your children patience and peace. There's a story I heard, and it was told by a grandmother, and her grandson came in. She was taking care of him. His mother had gone somewhere, and she was taking care of him, and he got really upset about something. And she was trying to calm him down, but she really didn't know what to do. And he took his plush toy, a rabbit, and he handed it to his grandmother. And he said, "Here, Grandma, pet my back like my mommy does." So his mother was one of those mothers that taught him how to self-soothe by her doing it. So by her soothing him when he was upset, he knew that that was his task. And so that's what he was doing. He wanted her to help him with that. And I know that automatically some people, you put your hand on the back of someone in between the shoulder blades. And when you touch that part of the body and pat it, it automatically, physiologically has a self-soothing response. So self-soothing is also called self-regulation. And it's just a really, really important skill for children to have. It's one thing that we do in Living Values, and we actually suggest that they do it in the classroom daily. They may only do a lesson 2 times a week. For little kids, 3 times a week. But that exercise, sometimes high schoolers will come into the class and say, "Miss, may we relax first?" I know that I was once told the story in Egypt about a 4th grade classroom, and the teacher had to go to the office for an emergency call. And when she got back, a 9-year-old little boy was standing in front of the class reading out of the Living Values book, one of the relaxation focusing exercises. And they were all sitting there completely calm, peaceful. So what we do in Living Values is we have exercises. Usually the first one is physical relaxation. And then there's one about being peaceful. And sometimes there's 2 about being peaceful. And then there's other ones where the kids learn to fill themselves up with love, with respect. For older ones, we actually have exercises where they learn how to deal with their own pain and to feel their pain and to surround it with love and to derive a lesson. So there's a huge variety. But for a person, be it a child or an adult, to be able to fill themselves with peace, love, respect, strength, whatever you want, is a huge advantage in the world, whether it's at a board meeting, at store, or with your children. And it adds so much joy for life. Education is the only thing that's ever changed the world, truly. And what you're doing is you're helping your children create a safe, peaceful, loving world by being the model for that. I wish you well with that.
Thank you, Dianne. I'm struck that although, I first met you in 1999 and Living Values has had quite a run, but there's a whole new story now. And Living Values, while it was originally geared for the school population, it's now available to adults and everyone, correct?
Correct.
So I have actually a few of the books with me that are available. This just happens to be the 8 to the 14 book. But tell us a little bit about how Living Values has evolved and how these books, people can get these books, what they can do with them, and so forth.
Okay. We had a wonderful publisher who was based in Florida, very close to you all. And we asked that wonderful publisher to release us, and they did in October of 2018. And the reason was that we wanted to send books to Africa. And, they didn't send books to Africa at the time. And for us to send one book would cost us $20. And, the books were $20, $25. And so it was a very expensive process. So what we decided to do is we asked our publisher to release us so that we could self-publish our books and then have the freedom to put the values units free of charge on the website, livingvalues.net, so that any person on earth could download those materials. So this is what created the change. And so in that process, we decided to update the books. So all the Living Values activities books for children 3 to 7, 8 to 14, young adults have been updated, and the LVE Educator Guide. So a huge change, Kathy, is that they have become much more relevant to the time. We're not only traditionally, we help the children visualize a peaceful world and what they want. For example, what 2 values would everyone have in your peaceful world? So we always have children, young people, adults do that because you know what you want. And each person has values inside and a lot of innate wisdom if we bother to touch it. So there's a lot of reflection activities and imagining activities as there was before, but we've added things like bullying, bullying no more stories, assertive skills, a lot of information about that kind of thing and developing the skills for that, where children learn a variety of methods to get out or to stop a bullying situation. We've also added guidelines for social media where they create guidelines for social media. We also talk about some of the real tragedies with kids 11, 12 and older, about some of the increases in suicide that are going on as a result of cyberbullying. But one of the things that remains constant is we teach them about conflict resolution. And the biggest thing in Living Values is to create a culture of peace and a culture of respect. What's new for adults is that the vice president currently of the Association for Living Values Education International, Roger Miles, he's not an educator, he's a businessman, but he fell in love with living values. And he said, this has changed my life learning about this. It must be able to change the lives of other people. And so he took the original books and he made a journal, a reflective journal. He took the activities in the young adult books and he took 4 activities out of each one of the Living Values activities for young adult books. And he put it in a booklet, which can be downloaded so that people can read it and do it. Currently, we have prisoners, for example, a couple of prisoners in California that lead living values education groups, study groups with other prisoners. And they write me letters and they say, I've never known about values before. And this has really changed my life. One of them told me, my cellmate is mentally ill. And the other day he was really misbehaving and I was just going to beat him up. I'd had it. And then I realized my values. And so I didn't. Very interesting. You know, they just write beautiful things. But now you can do that. And then you can do a little journal. And then if you like, you can read parts of the Living Values Education Trainer Guide and take a test and get a certificate as a Living Values Trainer if you're a teacher. But it's also been extended to people outside of education. So people in banks, it could happen in homeless communities. It can happen anywhere. But years ago, we did Living Values with the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia and with Karen tribe adults in Thailand. And we realized this really changes the entire community. So it is effective with adults. It does work. And if you want to do it in your community, you can be trained to do it in your community and do a 12-week, 2-hour program with a group of small people and be mentored through that process and then get your certificate that way if you're not a educator. So it's available now online. Big change.
That's a huge evolution, that Living Values is now available for everyone. And it's had a 20-year pilot testing, if you will, and the effectiveness, it's not just effective, but it's life-changing, as many people have attested. And Elahe, for example, at that 9/11 training, Dianne, you talked about your visit with Palestinians and Israelis and the suicide bomber who, after taking Living Values course, realized that the highest thing she could do was not a suicide bombing, but being a living values person and living by those values. So it really has been life-changing for so many people in small and imperceptible ways. So we invite everyone to go to livingvalues.net to download some materials, particularly as we're coming on Peace Day. There's many, many activities that you can do at home, in school, with your coworkers, with anyone, with yourself, to bring a little bit more peace into the world. So Dianne,
Kathy, let me interject there. If you are,
please, I wanted to.
Kathy, this is in Spanish now.
Ah, okay.
So this one just got published. We're publishing it in regional languages. But if you are going to do little activities with your kids, please start with the Peace Unit.
Yes, and that was always the foundational unit. And then these core skills of active listening, you saw the little lesson, and conflict resolution are key skills as well, right, Dianne?
Correct.
So many people are saying it's time for Living Values to come back to Miami. What would you suggest? How would we do that?
Oh, Kathy, you know everybody in the whole world. So
well,
you can answer that question.
So, but a first step would be to get some people, we used to call them Living Values enthusiasts, to get some enthusiasts trained and then see how it can be adapted in different places.
The books are much less expensive than they were. You know, they're very easily obtainable. You can get author copies very very, very inexpensively or free because somebody gave me some money. But I think that children need living values right now. Children are already upset about going to school, and then to go to school and have people be mean to them or to bully them. The living values schools have such a different atmosphere. I remember a story from a teacher of a daycare and preschool near here. And she told me that there was one little boy who was 4. He was told by his mother was told by the director of a preschool as he was kicked out of his 3rd preschool that he would need his own individual aid when he got to kindergarten because he was that troublesome and that violent. So he came to this school that had been doing living values for a number of years. And he tried all his old, obnoxious, horrible behaviors. And nobody got upset. People dealt with it. But they stayed friendly. They stayed loving. They included him. So the 3rd day he came to school and he gave it all up. He decided to be like them. But there is a school, for example, in Kuwait that did living values. It's done living values for 20 years. They say it's like a family, but you walk into the school and you can feel the difference. I mean, the Ministry of Education has noticed it. Everybody's noticed it. There was a school in Pauline, New York. It's a private school. And I called the principal and asked how many referrals for discipline she had ever received. And then she, at my request, asked the principal before her. So the 2 of them had been at that school for 10 years. The answer was 0. And Kathy at ACES, I think the principal said there simply is no bullying. So to create a culture of peace and respect and caring is so important for their children. It makes going to school a wonderful experience instead of an experience in which they may be tense because there's someone that's unkind or that ostracizes. And with the world it is the way it is right now, I think that's important, especially important.
Yeah, the pandemic has really highlighted people's emotional responses to things. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned some of the results of living values. And I think one of the others is that it fosters a sense of belonging. And that's something that we've sort of broken down our sense of community, and schools and colleges, institutions of all kinds function best when the people in them feel that they belong there. So I just want to give Living Values a shout out for that sense of belonging, that even those of us who were involved a long time ago, we remain Living Values enthusiasts, and the value of peace and the other universal values upon which you built the curriculum are even more, there's nothing old or old-fashioned about living values. It's as current as today.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Diane. Mita, are there any questions in the chat before we go on?
Not for now.
Not for now, okay. We've talked about some self-soothing behaviors. Diane, you mentioned those, and then fostering a sense of safety and security for parents. We talked a little bit about discipline, but how does Living Values discipline work in this era of the pandemic?
I have a slide, and it's a slide that I love. And it's a model, we call it the Living Values Education Theoretical Model. And there's a B in the middle for behavior. and then a line. And then above it are, in the picture, there's circles. So what the premise is when children are treated in such a way that they feel loved, respected, valued, understood, and safe, they move towards their potential. And then below the line, when children are treated in such a way that they feel inadequate, afraid, shamed, hurt, and unsafe, the opposite happens. So that some children become sad and upset, others become angry, resentful, go into violence. Some go into harming others go into self-harm. So it's a very interesting model, and we present that to people. We have teachers visualize it when they come into a workshop, and they visualize a school of their dreams, and they talk about what it would be like for themselves and for the children. And we even have them place themselves as a child and see what they would like from the adults. So we base discipline based on that by having people identify. First, they tell us as 5-year-olds how they would like the adults of the world to be. And then we have them identify all the positive things that they do that help them stay above the line, all the negative things that happen that they don't want. And then we look at how to convert those negative things and substitute something positive that will deal with the problem. So this can be done for an organization, for a school, for a classroom, for a family, for a child. So it's a very useful model. So the core of our discipline we start with is positive language, how to build positive behaviors, how to stop the spoilers and the negativity, and just leave a positive experience in the mind. Then there's more energy to grow in that direction. We do active listening, because active listening is such a gift and it's a tool. For example, with an angry teen who says, well, I'm not interested in about peace. I'm not interested in peace. I don't care about peace. You can say, so you really don't like peace? That's your active listening response. Tell me more. Because one of the secrets is that we know that all kids care about values. So we can ask that and have them. But if you're not resisting, they can go down from anger to the hurt or fear and down into their core qualities. So active listening is a huge one to avoid increasing the tension and yet allowing there to be the creation of a sacred space so that the child feels understood. So this is a very interesting process where you can actually learn how to have no conflict in a classroom or in a group. I remember once we had a training in another country, and one woman came in one day and 1 hour late, and then 30 minutes later attacked another person in the training, and the whole group went, and I thought, oops, I can't allow that to happen, because if they all go to her, there's going to be sides taken, and we will have lost our group harmony. So how can you deal with those kinds of conflicts? So these are other things that we teach in Living Values, which are very useful to teachers and to parents. And we need to teach our politicians how to do it. Oops, did I say that? So then there's, so the positive, the language, the active listening. And then there's timeout. So a timeout that is based on helping young people self-regulate. So you time out without anger. I think you need some me time. or for little kids, they build a see-through peace tent and they do quietly being exercises. But to time up people in a respectful age that's self-appropriate. With a teenager, you may say, hey, I think I need a timeout. And, talk beforehand though. There's a parenting book called Nurture with Love and Wisdom. You'll find my name on it in Amazon. You'll find all these books on Amazon. But this conversation beforehand about what do we want for our family or what do we want for our classroom. And then this is a time so that you can be okay again. When I worked as a school psychologist for 23 years, I loved it. But one of the 10-year-olds I got had a history of 1,000 fights before he got to me. And once he got to me, he never had another one. But one of the things that I did was I gave him the privilege of self-timing out. So I said to him, do you notice when you want to fight, do you get tight here and do you get tight in your arms? And he looked at me and he said, yeah. And I said, well, when you notice that feeling, signal to the teacher. And Mr. Benny was there, so he knew. And I said, and then you can go outside and stand outside the door for 5 minutes and make yourself okay again. So you can, be a good student. I already told him how smart I thought he was, etc. And I did say to him, it doesn't mean you play basketball. It doesn't mean you knock on the door. It doesn't mean you call out to the other kids. It means you stand by the door, because you have to know the kids. So that's one of the other things. The other thing is to deal with it directly. These techniques alone, with logical consequences as well, will usually do for 99% of the kids. There's one other method, which is a 4-step correction process, which is very effective. And basically you name what you love about the person. You can use this with a partner, with a dear friend that you're having a conflict with children, with a colleague, but with a teenager. But basically you tell them what you like about them or love about them and what your concern is about what's happening. And maybe they're calling out to other kids in class and creating a ruckus, whatever it is. And then the third one is what would happen if in the long run, if they use that behavior, probably, and what would happen if they have another behavior, and the 4th step, are they willing to work on it? And help them make a plan and share feelings and ask if there's anything you need to do differently, etc. But to really directly communicate, but in a very positive, non-guilt inducing, respectful, caring way. And it's magical. It really works. And of course, a big part is conflict resolution. Usually, when we teach conflict resolution, we teach it in the peace unit. It's followed by using conflict resolution with respect and then with love. So little kids get to go into a circle if they can think of a loving solution that would have stopped the problem. So usually within 6 weeks, children can do conflict resolution by themselves and take over the solving of problems from their teacher. They can have a little conflict resolution corner.
And
But
we've seen that work. We've seen that work in settings everywhere.
Wonderful.
Dianne, you've been all over the world, and I want one last piece of this to have you talk a little bit about, and that is the role of reflection in living values or meditation, or however we're calling it, and how that helps to create that values-based atmosphere that you described.
The first reflection we do is a reflection on a peaceful world and what it would be like. And so you say some words and the kids fill in the spaces. And then afterwards, they can draw a picture or share or whatever. But we all naturally want peace. Children, all people do. We naturally want that. So when we create that space for ourselves, it allows us to feel that and to go into that and to look at what's important. I used to do this even with pre-gang kids. And then we had a place to start something in common from what they had said they wanted. The quietly being exercises or meditation, we don't call it meditation, although that is used in schools now, but it's a guided thing where they fill themselves with that. And I think that in this day and age, people need that. Meditation is one of the key things for building resiliency right now. In adults, they're finding that it changes different areas of the brain. It actually decreases the size of cells in the amygdala, where people used to get enraged and upset. It actually has a physiological effect. So it's a wonderful, wonderful tool. And when children can do that, and when adults can do that, imagine you doing it when somebody's upset. To be able to stay in your respect and peace and love and say you're really concerned about that. One of my favorite stories, I hope you didn't show this video, I don't know if it's in a video, but one of my favorite stories was a gang father who was screaming at his secretary. And I went up and just tapped on his shoulder, which was up here. And he swung towards me and I said, "You seem really upset." And he goes, "Uh-huh." And I said, "You're really concerned about something. Uh-huh. Would you like to solve the problem? Uh-huh. Follow me." So to be able to self-soothe, to create a space for that. And I think also it can help children and adults know their own values and who they really are. We all have our favorite values. And I know that when we get older, we can become more bitter or more sweet or more full of love. And what do we want to do? So yes, meditation is great. Prayer is great. Reflection and imagining beautiful things is great. And I'm a great advocate of be the change you want to see in the world. And Kathy, I can't help myself. I'm going to have to put in a plug. In every single one of the Living Values books, there is a values unit on simplicity and caring for the earth and our oceans. Please do that with your child. If they don't do living values in his school or in his classroom, do the peace, do the love, do the simplicity and caring for the earth and our oceans. Children, young people are very, very concerned about the earth. And many, many of us adults. And there's so many wonderful things you can do together and really bond with it and have fun with it and do something constructive with it. Our children need it.
Well, that's a good place to move into an experience. And I can attest that over time, children, all of us actually develop our favorite values. And I know Enid is always been a fan of simplicity. For 20 years, if you ask her her favorite value, it's simplicity. And over time, not only do we have our favorite value, but that becomes second nature, part of our nature, and enacted in everyday life. So to be able to start living values with kids, as young as infants, actually, to help them in a subtle way experience that values-based atmosphere and then learn and grow within that is a great gift. So Dianne, thank you very much.